Hi everyone and welcome to my guide for the Sunwuko Lashing Tailkick Monk. So this is a build that I have played and that has kind of re-emerged in Season 24 with the buffs to the inner supporting items, the Crutus Boots, the Bindings of the Lesser Gods, and also the Rabid Strike. So this build is based around this weapon, and essentially this guy got a huge buff to the point where it is actually quite competitive on the Sunwuko leaderboards. So I have cleared a GR135 with this in the current season. So this is done with the ethereal weapons, which boost this build by 6 to 7 tiers or so. But this can definitely be optimized. I wasn't fully augmented. I have pretty good gear, but it definitely has some potential beyond GR140 on the high end, even on non-season. This build doesn't rely on the ethereal in any way. It's just a damage buff like for most other builds too. So if you see this guide in the future, it is pretty much the same, just a bit weaker. Now, how does this setup work exactly? We have the Rabid Strike, and this is the core of the build, like in Wave of Light as well. So you have to be in Epiphany at all times, and when you attack, you will summon this clone that will do the attack for you as well. So essentially, it's about micromanaging your cooldowns, your resources, and also this clone's positioning. Essentially, you want to have rather small pulls because you have the Scarbringer, which makes you deal significant damage only to 7 enemies at a time, and that also applies to your clone, which most of the time hits even less than that because it teleports around the pull a little bit, and even when you have more than 7 enemies present, it might not hit 7. So it's usually fine to have slightly bigger pulls. Other than this, you have to apply your Cyclone Strike with Bindings of Lesser Gods to enemies, because this buff counts for the Rabid Strike clone. So this is quite important. It gives you triple damage. So essentially you want to go around the pull or just have like a rather small pull, do a Cyclone Strike, and you want to repeat that every 5 seconds so you can keep attacking at full damage. And finally there's the Crutus Boots, which gives you 2 Mystic Allies. This buff also applies to the Rabid Strike clone, so that you have a pretty big damage multiplier. Your own damage is essentially 0 in this setup, just like on Wave of Light. In fact, you can actually play the same build with Wave of Light on Sunwuko as well, if you like, and you just swap those Lashing Tailkick pieces to Wave of Light pieces. Lastly, as another big damage multiplier, we have the Redrama Dances, the boots, that give you 50% multiplicative attack speed bonus and 300% multiplicative damage bonus. So they are pretty nuts, and they also allow you to stack Stricken really fast, so the boss kills are actually pretty quick. And in the case of Season 24, you also have the Bartok's effect, which also stacks quite fast, so this is really nice. Now for the rest of the setup, we have 5 Sunwuko pieces. We have Ring of Royal Grandeur to make sure that we combine this with the Crimson. Crimson has insane value because you need both a lot of cooldown and a lot of resources. And then we have the Sunwuko Amulet to make sure that we can equip all this stuff together. As your ring, you need an Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac to reset your Epiphany, so you can always have Epiphany up. You also want to reset your Mystic Ally, Air Ally, which you use to gain resources back. So those are your 2 main ways to acquire resources. And the last slot is filled with another ring, which is Unity or Convention of Elements. Now I have played this the first time with Unity, and I would definitely recommend this at anything below like 2.5k paragons at least. I am 3,500 and I have 6 augments, so I'm not really in a bad spot. But I was running with almost 7,000 vitality, 20k dex, so that makes me kind of tanky, and I also had to really watch out of what I'm fighting. So Unity is recommended, but high end you can go with the Convention of Elements. I also have the entire setup in the defeat planner here in the description, so you can go check it out. We also have the legendary gems here, for example, with Banisher Trapped, Enforcer, and Banisher Stricken, so nothing really special here. The Enforcer is mainly for your Rabid Strike clone yet again, so it's considered a pet and it works with the pet multipliers. What does not work is Mystic Ally damage that you can roll on your chest and your shoulders, so you don't have to do that, and instead you go for cooldown, resource, and air damage wherever you can. You don't really have much opportunity to stack air damage. You can put it maybe on a weapon or maybe on a glove if you find a quad factor glove, but that's about it. It's not really the most important stat. Make sure that you have the right values on resource and cooldown. You want to have it basically everywhere you can, because if you don't have at least around 55 cooldown and around 55 resources, you will just not have enough resources to keep kicking, keep resetting your cooldowns with Zodiac, and then everything just falls apart. The neat part here is that when you stack more resource cost reduction, you also gain more damage reduction from the Crimson set, so it's extremely powerful, while when you stack more cooldown reduction, you barely get any extra damage because of how the scaling of the set works. So if you have to decide between the two, I would usually go with the resource cost reduction because it has pretty good value, and instead, if you feel too tanky, I would replace one of the passives with something more offensive. For example, you might not need Harmony after all, and you can go with something like Unity or Determination. For the playstyle, what you need to know is you have to always keep up your Epiphany, else you are squishy and you don't deal any damage with the clone. For the playstyle, what you need to know is that we always have to keep up Epiphany, else you're gonna be squishy and you deal 0 damage without the clone. And you also have to keep up Seeping Wind at all times, which stacks up to 13 from the Vengeful Wind effect, and this buffs your 6-piece bonus. Be especially careful when you change levels, or maybe when you had a Conduit Pylon and stuff like that, because sometimes you might just not be hitting anything for a while and your Seeping Wind stacks drop. So make sure you press that button again, because also you might get one-shot easily. It also gives you 50% damage reduction. Aside from this, you want to make sure you always Cyclone Strike at least once every 5 seconds. When you have a large pull, you can also do 2 Cyclone Strikes, because then it can be a bit RNG where your clone will go and what it will hit. So you want to make sure that you have the triple damage bonus on the braces out pretty much everything. And then you just keep kicking pretty much at all times. Maybe sometimes you find an Oculus Ring. It spawns very rarely because the Rapid Strike clone is considered a pet, and pet kills don't count towards Oculus spawns, but it does happen, so try to use those. And you want to reset your Mystic Ally, Air Ally, and use it whenever you run low in resources. This gives you 200 spirit when you use it. You have roughly 300 something spirit depending on your rolls, and if you put it on Paragons, I would recommend this. And this allows you to have a bit better resource management. And the rest of the time you can use the dash to make pulls, pull enemies along with Cyclone Strike, and also it gives you a lot of damage reduction with the dodge chance. So when you're in a big pull, you definitely want to use that sometimes. I use it very often to just go in position and do a Cyclone Strike there and then start kicking, and then I do that for a few seconds and I repeat again somewhere else. So I get all my buffs up every few seconds with just a tap of a button. The cool part about this build is that it has really consistent results, because the Scarbringer doesn't really let you benefit from very large pulls. So you don't really need to fish a lot to have a good run, and you can easily progress your way even through narrow, tiny maps and just fight small pools of enemies and move on. And as long as you have good monster types and elites that don't really mess you up, you're gonna have pretty good results. And that concludes this guide, so I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you're gonna have a lot of fun with your Lashing Tailkick Monk. It's quite amazing to see all the results of the Season 24 rework, and this is definitely a really cool unintended outcome, I imagine. So I had a lot of fun pushing this build so far, and maybe I'll do more in the future, and hope you will do too. So hope you liked the video, and see you guys next time.